I'm Sandra, 64 years old today, standing alone in my kitchen, staring at my silent phone. After my husband Paul died, I poured everything into raising our son William and building our catering empire to secure his future. The business flourished, but somewhere along the way, I lost my son. I finally sent a text expressing my sadness that everyone forgot my birthday. What I received back shattered my world. We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all. And his wife Natalie had liked the message. If you're watching this from a place where family still matters, hit that like button and subscribe as I share how I discovered what real family means. I grew up in a modest middle-class neighborhood in Connecticut. My parents worked hard to provide for us, instilling values of education, hard work, and family loyalty. I met Paul during my sophomore year of college at a campus fundraiser. He was tall, thoughtful, with kind eyes that crinkled when he laughed. We married right after graduation, and William came along 3 years later. Paul built a promising career in finance while I supported our family as an elementary school teacher. We had the perfect little life in our starter home with our beautiful boy. Paul would swing William around in the backyard while I prepared Sunday dinners. Our kitchen was always filled with laughter and the scent of fresh-baked cookies. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Paul had suffered a massive heart attack at work. By the time I reached the hospital, he was gone. Just like that, at 36, I became a widow with an 8-year-old son to raise alone. The first months were a blur of grief, funeral arrangements, insurance paperwork, and trying to stay strong for William. His little face, so confused and heartbroken, became my reason to get out of bed each morning. I remember the night he crawled into my bed, clutching his father's old sweater, asking when the pain would stop. I held him close, not having an answer, but promising we would find a way forward together. Financial reality hit hard. Paul's life insurance covered immediate expenses, but I knew my teaching salary wouldn't maintain our lifestyle or save enough for William's college. I had always loved cooking and entertaining. Paul used to joke I should open my own restaurant. With nothing to lose, I started a small catering business from our kitchen, offering home-cooked meals to busy families in our neighborhood. The business grew quickly, surprising even me. I hired my first employee within 6 months. By year 3, Sandra's Savories had a commercial kitchen, 10 employees, and contracts with corporate clients. I worked 18-hour days, expanding to event catering, then adding a meal delivery service. Every milestone was bittersweet without Paul to share it, but William kept me going. Despite my grueling schedule, I never missed William's baseball games or school concerts. I'd rush from overseeing a corporate event to sit in the back row of his science fair, still in my chef's coat. I remember his face lighting up when he spotted me. That smile made every exhausting moment worthwhile. I was determined to give William every opportunity. When my business success allowed it, I moved us to a better neighborhood and enrolled him in Westfield Academy, the most prestigious private school in our area. The tuition cost more than our mortgage, but watching him thrive among excellent teachers and motivated peers justified every penny. William excelled academically and socially. While some wealthy families at Westfield looked down on the catering lady, William never seemed embarrassed by our background or my work. He'd proudly introduce me to his friends, sometimes bringing them to the commercial kitchen to sample new recipes. Those were golden years, challenging but rewarding, as I watched my boy grow into a confident young man. When William left for Princeton, Paul's alma mater, I felt both profound pride and emptiness. The house echoed without his presence, but my business kept expanding, filling the void. I had become quite successful, my catering empire growing into a regional powerhouse with multiple divisions and nearly 100 employees. William thrived at Princeton, majoring in business. During his junior year, he met Natalie. She came from old money with the polished manners and refined tastes that reflected her upbringing. The first time he brought her home during spring break, I made every effort to welcome her. I prepared an elaborate meal featuring her favorite foods William had mentioned. Initially, Natalie seemed delightful, complimenting my home, asking thoughtful questions about my business, even requesting my recipes. She brought an expensive bottle of wine and a handwritten thank you note the following day. I was thrilled that William had found someone so gracious and well-mannered. Their relationship progressed quickly. After graduation, William announced they were engaged. I offered to pay for their wedding, wanting to give my son the celebration he deserved. Natalie's parents, though wealthy, were going through a divorce and financial complications. They seemed relieved when I stepped forward. The wedding planning revealed subtle changes in Natalie's demeanor toward me. She became dismissive of my suggestions, often saying things like, "That's a bit outdated, don't you think, Sandra?" She and William chose a destination wedding in the Hamptons that cost more than my first commercial kitchen. I wrote the checks without complaint, wanting their perfect day. After the honeymoon, I gave them their first house as a wedding gift, a beautiful colonial just 20 minutes from me. I thought we would have Sunday dinners and holidays together, that I would be included in their new life. Perhaps I was naive. William had joined a prestigious consulting firm, while Natalie talked about starting an interior design business someday. Meanwhile, I established trust funds for them, both providing generous monthly allowances so they could find their passions without financial pressure. I wanted to give William the security Paul and I had always dreamed of for him. The first signs of trouble were subtle. Dinner invitations accepted then canceled last minute. Calls that went to voicemail. Holidays where I was included as an afterthought. Once I arrived at their home for Thanksgiving, to find they had already eaten without me due to a misunderstanding about the time. When I mentioned these incidents to William, he'd seemed genuinely apologetic, blaming work stress or miscommunication. Natalie would smile tightly and say, "We're just so busy building our lives, Sandra. I'm sure you understand." I did understand, or thought I did. I remembered the pressures of building a career and a marriage. I told myself not to be the clingy mother-in-law, the demanding parent. I backed off, making myself available without imposing, waiting for invitations rather than suggesting get-togethers. Meanwhile, their requests for financial help increased. The trust fund wasn't enough for the lifestyle they wanted. William called about investing in a friend's startup. Natalie needed capital for her design business that never quite launched. They wanted to renovate their already perfect kitchen. I never refused, believing these were investments in our family's future. I rationalized their growing distance, telling myself they were just establishing their independence. All young couples need space from parents, right? William had always been a good son. Surely this was just a phase, a temporary adjustment period. I kept believing that as months turned into years, as the distance between us grew from a crack to a chasm, I never imagined that the son I had sacrificed everything for would one day tell me to disappear from his life. But looking back, the signs were there all along. I just didn't want to see them. I woke up on my 64th birthday to silence. No early morning call from William, no text from Natalie, not even a card in the mail. Still, I tried to stay positive. Perhaps they were planning something for later, a surprise dinner or weekend visit. The April morning was beautiful, sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows as I prepared a small birthday breakfast for myself. I made Paul's special blueberry pancakes, a tradition I continued even after he was gone. Setting the table for one, I remembered birthdays past. Paul bringing me breakfast in bed, William's handmade cards with wobbly letters and too much glitter. William always made birthdays special, even as a child. I remembered my 42nd birthday, just months after Paul died, when William saved his allowance to buy me a small silver necklace. "So, you always have something shiny to make you smile, Mom," he had said. I still wore that necklace on difficult days. The house felt especially empty as I ate my pancakes alone. I checked my phone. Nothing. No matter, I thought the day was young. I had planned a self-care day, a massage appointment, lunch at my favorite bistro, perhaps some shopping. 64 wasn't a milestone birthday after all. I shouldn't expect too much fuss. Throughout the morning, I kept glancing at my phone. Each time I heard the phantom ding of a text message that wasn't there, my heart sank a little lower. By noon, I began wondering if something was wrong. Were William and Natalie okay? Should I call to check? No? I decided they were adults with busy lives. If they had forgotten calling, would only make them feel guilty. My massage therapist, Diane, wished me happy birthday with a small gift, lavender bath salts. From one 60-something to another, she winked. The receptionist at the spa overheard and brought out a cupcake with a candle. These small kindnesses from virtual strangers made the silence from my son all the more conspicuous. At lunch, I found myself seated near a mother and daughter celebrating the daughter's promotion. They laughed and clinked glasses, the mother beaming with pride. I averted my eyes, focusing intently on my menu as unexpected tears threatened. The waiter, noticing my solo dining, asked if I was celebrating anything. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Back home by late afternoon, I checked my mail one last time. Bills, advertisements, a dentist reminder, but no birthday card. My phone remained stubbornly silent. I poured a glass of wine and sat on my patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Paul would have had flowers delivered, I thought. He never forgot a birthday or anniversary. Evening descended, and with it my carefully constructed optimism crumbled. I scrolled through Facebook, seeing birthday wishes from distant cousins and former colleagues who'd been prompted by the app's reminder. Nothing from William or Natalie, though both had been active online throughout the day. Natalie had even posted pictures of their new patio furniture, an expensive set I had helped finance. By 9 o'clock, I couldn't pretend anymore. The hurt crystallized into something sharp and undeniable. My only child, the person I had devoted my life to raising and supporting, had forgotten the day I brought him into this world. Or worse, had remembered and chosen not to acknowledge it. I debated with myself for another hour. Would reaching out seem needy, manipulative? Was I overreacting? I scrolled through our recent text exchanges, increasingly brief on their end, mostly related to financial matters. When was the last time William had initiated contact just to check in? I couldn't remember. Finally, after a second glass of wine bolstered my courage, I composed a text. I rewrote it several times, trying to convey my feelings without sounding accusatory or self-pitying. Eventually, I settled on, "Just wanted to say I miss you both. A bit sad no one remembered my birthday today. Hope everything is okay with you." I hit send, then immediately regretted it. Maybe I should have kept my disappointment to myself. Maybe mentioning the forgotten birthday would make them defensive. Too late now. The message showed as delivered. I busied myself with loading the dishwasher, wiping down counters, anything to avoid staring at my phone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The house creaked and settled around me, the silence almost mocking. Finally, my phone chimed. My heart leapt, then plummeted as I read William's response. "We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all." I blinked, certain I had misread, but the harsh words remained unchanged on my screen. Beneath them appeared the notification that Natalie had liked the message. The room seemed to tilt sideways. A physical pain spread through my chest, radiating outward. I clutched the kitchen counter for support, rereading the message until the words blurred through my tears. This couldn't be happening. Not William, not my boy who had once crawled into my lap during thunderstorms, who had sobbed against my shoulder at his father's funeral, who had hugged me so tightly at his college graduation that I could barely breathe. I sank to the floor, phone clutched against my chest. Questions flooded my mind. What had I done? When had his love turned to rejection? Was this Natalie's influence or truly his wish? Had he felt this way for long? Why, today of all days, I tried calling him. My fingers trembling as I pressed his number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. Had he blocked me already? I sent another text. "William, please talk to me. I don't understand. What's happened?" No response, not even the small comfort of seeing the message marked as read. I called Natalie's number with the same result: voicemail. I checked social media only to discover I could no longer view their profiles. In the space of minutes, they had systematically cut me out of their digital lives as decisively as they had just excised me from their real one. I don't remember crawling into bed that night. I only recall the crushing weight on my chest, the pillow wet with tears, and the terrible echoing silence of my phone. My birthday had ended with the cruelest gift imaginable: the knowledge that my only child wanted nothing more to do with me. Sleep eluded me completely that night. I lay awake as memories crashed over me like relentless waves, each one highlighting moments I should have recognized as warning signs. The bedroom ceiling became a screen where I projected the slow deterioration of my relationship with my son. 2 Christmases ago, William and Natalie had hosted the holiday at their home for the first time. I arrived with homemade cookies and presents only to discover they had invited Natalie's entire family, but positioned me at the far end of the table, separated from William by 3 of Natalie's college friends. When I tried to help in the kitchen, Natalie politely but firmly suggested I just relax and enjoy being a guest. I spent most of the evening watching from the periphery as my son laughed and bonded with his in-laws while barely acknowledging my presence. Last Thanksgiving, they had traveled to Aspen with Natalie's parents instead of joining me. "We need to prioritize her family sometimes, Mom," William had explained when I expressed disappointment, but sometimes had become always as they spent Easter July 4th and even William's birthday with her family, while offering me only hurried coffee dates or occasional dinners where they checked their watches throughout. The financial pattern became clearer in my midnight reflections. Despite the generous trust fund providing them with $25,000 monthly, they constantly requested loans for special projects or investments. Just 3 months ago, William had called asking for $50,000 to invest in a friend's tech startup. I transferred the money immediately, no questions asked. 2 weeks later, I saw Natalie posting photos of their Maldives vacation, a trip they never mentioned to me. Most painful was remembering last summer's family reunion. I had overheard Natalie in the guest bathroom on the phone with her friend. Just 2 more hours of Sandra's endless stories about her catering business. She had laughed. "William says we have to put in FaceTime if we want to stay in the will." I had frozen outside the door, too shocked to confront her. Later, I convinced myself I had misheard or misinterpreted. As dawn broke on the day after my birthday, I found myself revisiting William's childhood. I remembered nights spent helping him with science projects while simultaneously finalizing catering contracts. The time I left an important client meeting to watch him pitch in a championship baseball game. The weekends, I could have been dating or rebuilding my social life, but instead took him camping, to museums, to college tours. I had declined 2 marriage proposals over the years, both from kind, successful men. "William needs to be my priority right now," I had explained to the last one, even though William was already in college by then. The truth was, I had structured my entire existence around being William's mother. My business succeeded largely because I wanted to provide for him, to make Paul proud, to ensure our son had every advantage. I thought about the day William graduated from Princeton. I had stood watching him in his cap and gown, thinking Paul would burst with pride if he could see our son. William had hugged me tightly afterward, whispering, "I did it for both of you, Mom." That moment had sustained me through many lonely nights. Had it meant anything to him at all? Around 5 in the morning, a new uncomfortable realization began taking shape. What if William and Natalie saw me primarily as a financial resource rather than a mother and mother-in-law? The thought felt disloyal, but once it formed, I couldn't dismiss it. They drove luxury cars I had helped purchase, lived in a house that was my gift, traveled extravagantly while claiming they were finding themselves professionally, all subsidized by my decades of hard work. Yet when I suggested meeting for dinner, they were too busy. When I asked about grandchildren, the subject was deftly changed. When I mentioned feeling lonely during holidays, William would say, "You work so hard, Mom. You should take a vacation," never extending an invitation to join them. 6 months ago, William and Natalie had shown up unexpectedly on a Sunday afternoon. They gave me a rushed tour of their new matching Rolex watches and designer clothes before William mentioned they were a bit short this month because of unexpected expenses. I wrote them a check for $20,000 without question. The following weekend, when I suggested Sunday dinner, they were swamped with prior commitments. The most revealing incident had occurred just weeks ago. I had finally voiced my feelings, telling William I missed our closer relationship and felt increasingly excluded from his life. Instead of reassurance, he had grown defensive. "You're emotionally manipulating me, Mom." He had said a phrase that sounded more like Natalie than my son. "We're adults with our own lives. You need to find more friends your own age." As morning light filled my bedroom, I faced the painful truth. My son and his wife had been using me financially while systematically pushing me out emotionally. Last night's text wasn't a sudden decision. It was the culmination of a long-planned exit delivered once they felt secure enough in their financial position or frustrated enough by my continued emotional needs. I finally rose from bed exhausted, but oddly clear-headed. The woman who looked back from the mirror had puffy eyes and pallid skin, but something new flickered behind her gaze. Not just hurt, but the first smoldering ember of anger. Not blind rage, but the slow-burning recognition that I deserved better than to be discarded by the very people I had sacrificed everything for. The text message hadn't created this situation. It had merely revealed what had been true for a long time. The son I thought I knew, the relationship I believed we had. Perhaps these were illusions I had desperately maintained while the reality slowly shifted beneath my feet. As I made my morning coffee, one question kept circling in my mind. What would I advise one of my friends to do in this situation? The answer came with surprising clarity. I would tell her to protect herself, emotionally and financially, from people who had demonstrated they did not value her except for what she could provide. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what my life might look like if I accepted William's decision and moved forward without him. The thought was terrifying. It was also, I realized with a shock, slightly liberating. The morning after my birthday, I moved through my home like a ghost. I made coffee I couldn't taste and toast I couldn't eat. The crushing weight of William's text message still pressed on my chest, making it difficult to breathe normally. But beneath the grief, something else was stirring. A quiet voice asking what I intended to do next. Around 10, I called Maria, my oldest friend, who had stood beside me through Paul's death and the early desperate days of single motherhood. Maria had always been direct, sometimes uncomfortably so. "He said what?" she gasped when I read her the text. "On your birthday, Sandra, that's beyond cruel." "Maybe I've been too needy," I suggested weakly. "William said once that I rely too much on him emotionally." "Stop that right now." Maria's voice sharpened. "You've been nothing but generous with that boy. Too generous, if you ask me. Do you know what your precious son was saying about you at the Lakeside Club last month?" My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Maria hesitated. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you, but given what's happened, William and Natalie were there for some charity thing. I overheard them at the bar with another couple. William was complaining about your constant neediness and joking about how they've mastered the art of extracting money while minimizing actual contact. Natalie was giggling about inheritance plans. Sandra, it was awful. I nearly confronted them." Each word hit like a physical blow. "You must have misunderstood," I whispered, though deep down I knew she hadn't. "I wish I had," Maria said softly. "Look, I know he's your son, but this has gone beyond normal family tension. They're using you, Sandra. And now they're discarding you once they think they've secured their financial future. After we hung up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table. Maria's words aligned too perfectly with the patterns I'd recognized during my sleepless night. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with financially. I called Robert, my financial advisor of 15 years. "Sandra, perfect timing. I was about to call you," he said. "I noticed some unusual activity on William and Natalie's trust withdrawals this month. They've maxed out their allowance and attempted several overdrafts. How much are they taking monthly?" I asked, realizing I hadn't reviewed the trust details in years. "Currently, $25,000 to $1,000 per month, plus the special disbursements you've approved separately. Last year alone, those extra disbursements totaled just over $400,000. The figure stunned me. $500,000 in a single year, and they still needed more. "Send me complete statements for the past 3 years," I requested. "And Robert, I may be making some changes soon. Please don't discuss this with William if he calls." After hanging up, I went to my home office and pulled out recent bank statements. The picture they painted was sobering. Beyond the trust I had given William and Natalie, loans that were never repaid paid for luxury vacations as gifts, covered the down payment on their vacation property in Vermont, and continuously funded Natalie's design business that produced no actual designs. What had they given me in return? Missed birthdays, canceled dinners, cold shoulders at family events, and finally, a text message telling me to disappear from their lives. As I reviewed the financial documents, something shifted inside me. The paralyzing hurt began transforming into something sharper, more clarifying. I had built a multi-million-dollar business from nothing while raising a child alone. I had weathered Paul's death market crashes and cutthroat competitors. I wasn't a weak woman yet. I had allowed myself to be manipulated and used by the very people I loved most. I picked up the phone again, this time calling Edward Kane, my attorney since the early days of my business. "Sandra, what can I do for you?" His familiar voice was comforting. "I need to discuss some significant changes to my estate planning and the trust funds I established for my son and daughter-in-law." "Of course. Is everything all right?" "No," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "But it will be." We scheduled a meeting for the following morning. After hanging up, I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo of William's college graduation. The smiling young man with his arm around me seemed like a stranger now. I picked up my phone and reread William's cruel text, "We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all." And beneath it, the notification that Natalie had liked it. With fingers that no longer trembled, I typed my response. "Message received. I respect your need for space. I've instructed my attorney to handle any necessary communication going forward." I pressed send, then methodically blocked both their numbers. I removed them from my social media accounts, deleted their email addresses from my contacts. Each digital severance felt like cutting a cord, painful yet necessary. The next morning, I met with Edward in his downtown office. I laid out the situation without emotion, though he looked increasingly disturbed as I shared the details of William and Natalie's behavior. "What exactly would you like to do, Sandra?" he asked when I finished. "First, I want to freeze their access to the trust funds immediately. Can we do that?" He nodded. "The trusts were established with you as trustee with broad discretionary powers. We can freeze disbursements pending review citing potential misuse." "Good. Second, I want to redraft my will. William will receive a modest inheritance, enough to reflect his position as my son, but not the windfall he's expecting. The bulk of my estate will go to the charitable foundation I've been considering." "And the house you gave them?" Edward asked. "The deed is in their names. That remains theirs." I wouldn't sink to pettiness regardless of how much they had hurt me. "What about the business?" I had been thinking about this. "I have several long-term employees who have contributed significantly to our success. I'd like to establish an employee ownership plan for them instead." By the end of our 2-hour meeting, we had outlined a complete restructuring of my estate. Edward promised to have the paperwork ready within days. As I stood to leave, He touched my arm gently. Sandra, are you sure about this? Such decisions shouldn't be made in anger. I'm not angry, Edward, I replied, realizing it was true. I'm heartbroken, but for the first time in years, I'm seeing clearly. William and Natalie have shown me exactly who they are and what they value. I'm simply adjusting my plans to reflect that reality. Driving home, I experienced the strangest mixture of emotions, devastating grief alongside something that felt almost like relief. For years, I had contorted myself trying to maintain a relationship with a son who increasingly saw me as nothing but a checkbook. The painful clarity of his rejection had finally freed me from that exhausting charade. At home, I noticed William had sent several texts to my email since his number was blocked. They ranged from confused, "Mom, did you block me?" to angry, "This is childish and manipulative." I forwarded them to Edward without responding, and then blocked his email too. That evening, I sat on my patio watching the sunset, a glass of wine in hand. The same view I had contemplated on my birthday now looked different somehow. The world hadn't changed, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. The woman who had awakened on her 64th birthday, eager for her son's call, desperate for his approval, was gone. In her place was someone I was just beginning to recognize. Someone with boundaries, self-respect, and the courage to enforce both. I raised my glass to the darkening sky where the first stars were appearing. "I'll be okay, Paul," I whispered to my long-gone husband. We raised him the best we could. The rest was up to him. For the first time since reading William's devastating text, I slept through the night. The reactions came swiftly once William and Natalie discovered their financial pipeline had been severed. Within 48 hours of Edward freezing their trust funds, my silent phone erupted with activity from numbers I didn't recognize. Friends' phones they were borrowing to bypass my blocks. The first voicemail captured their disbelief. "Mom, what is going on?" "There must be some mistake with the trust. Call me back immediately." William's voice sounded more irritated than concerned. By the third call, the tone had shifted dramatically. "Mom, please, we need to talk. Whatever misunderstanding happened, we can work it out. I'm worried about you." False concern dripped from every syllable. The fifth message revealed their true feelings. "This is absolutely insane. You can't just cut us off because your feelings got hurt. After everything we've done for you, call me back, or I swear to God, Mom." I saved each message without responding, forwarding them to Edward as documentation. "Quite the transformation," he noted dryly. "From 'don't contact us ever again' to 5 panic calls in one day." On day 3, a certified letter arrived from an attorney representing William and Natalie. It claimed I was acting erratically and demanded immediate restoration of their funds, threatening legal action for emotional distress and breach of verbal contract. Edward responded with clinical precision, quoting William's text message and highlighting the irony of their position. "Your clients explicitly requested no contact from my client. She is respecting their wishes. The discretionary trust established by Ms. Franklin remains under her full legal control as trustee. No further communication should be directed to her personally." A week after my birthday, William showed up at my front door unannounced. I saw his luxury SUV through the window and felt my heart race. For a moment, hope fluttered. Perhaps he truly regretted his cruelty. Perhaps he missed his mother, not just her money. I opened the door but remained in the threshold, blocking entry. William looked haggard. His normally perfectly styled hair disheveled his expression, a practiced blend of concern and contrition. "Mom," he started, voice gentle. "We've been so worried. You're not answering calls, you've blocked us everywhere. This isn't like you." "Actually, William, this is exactly like me," I replied calmly. "I'm respecting your boundaries. You asked for space. You asked me not to reach out any more at all. Those were your exact words." His expression flickered momentarily, thrown by having his own words quoted back to him. He recovered quickly. I was upset that night. You know how stressful things have been with my job and Natalie's business launching. I didn't mean it that way. How did you mean it then? I asked, my voice steady. Let's not do this on the doorstep. Can I come in? We should talk about whatever's happening with the trust fund too. There seems to be some technical issue. There's no technical issue, William. I froze the accounts. His facade cracked. You what? You can't do that. I can, and I did. As trustee, I have complete discretion over disbursements. His face darkened. This is about that stupid birthday text, isn't it? My God, Mom, how petty can you be? So we forgot your birthday, and I said something harsh. That's worth destroying our relationship, cutting us off financially. You didn't forget my birthday, William. You and Natalie were both active on social media that day. You made a choice not to acknowledge it, just as you made a choice to tell me not to contact you again. I'm simply honoring your request and protecting myself in the process. Protecting yourself? He laughed bitterly. From what, your only son? This is vindictive punishment, and you know it. No, William. This is a consequence. There's a difference. His pretense of concern vanished entirely. You know what Natalie was right about you all along. You're manipulative, controlling. You use money to make people dance to your tune. Well, guess what? We don't need your money. Keep your precious fortune. See if anyone's there for you when you're old and alone. I already am alone, I said quietly. You made that very clear on my birthday. Something in my calm demeanor seemed to unnerve him more than if I had shouted back. He stood speechless for a moment, then turned and stormed back to his car. As he peeled out of my driveway, I closed the door gently and leaned against it, expecting tears that didn't come. Instead, I felt an odd sense of completion, as if a long, painful chapter had finally ended. The next phase of their campaign began with Natalie calling mutual friends and family members. Within days, I started receiving concerned calls from people who rarely contacted me otherwise. Sandra, is everything okay? Natalie mentioned you might be having some cognitive issues, said my cousin Janet, whom I hadn't spoken to in over a year. William is worried sick about you, reported a business associate. He says you're acting erratically, making impulsive financial decisions. The narrative they were spinning became clear. I wasn't a mother enforcing boundaries, but a mentally declining woman who needed intervention, preferably before I could redirect any more of their inheritance. I responded to these calls with simple dignity. William and I are having a private family matter. I appreciate your concern, but my mental faculties are perfectly intact, as my doctor, attorney, and financial advisor can attest. The weeks following my birthday became a masterclass in boundaries. William and Natalie attempted every approach, flying monkeys, guilt trips, gaslighting, even a fake medical emergency. Natalie's mother had supposedly had a heart attack, and they needed funds for specialized treatment. A quick call to her very much alive and healthy mother confirmed the deception. Through it all, I maintained the wall of silence they had requested, communicating only through Edward when absolutely necessary. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than burying my husband, harder than building my business from scratch. Every maternal instinct screamed to reconcile, to give in, to pretend their cruelty had never happened if it meant having my son back in my life. But the woman who would have done that, the woman who had accepted scraps of attention in exchange for financial support, was gone. In her place stood someone who finally recognized that love without respect isn't love at all. The first major holiday after the breach was Easter. I had always hosted an elaborate Easter brunch, even in recent years when William and Natalie arrived late and left early. This year, I woke to a quiet house and the knowledge that no one would be coming. I had declined invitations from friends not ready to discuss my family situation over ham and deviled eggs. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where Paul was buried. I hadn't visited in months, always too busy with work or trying to accommodate William's schedule. I placed fresh flowers on his grave and sat on the bench nearby. "I think I failed him, Paul," I said aloud. "Somewhere along the way, I raised a son who believes money matters more than people, who could discard his mother with a text message." Tears came, then not for William's rejection, but for the deeper failure it represented. As spring turned to summer, William made one last desperate attempt. He showed up on Mother's Day with an enormous bouquet and his most charming smile, the one that had worked on me since he was small. "Happy Mother's Day to the best mom anyone could ask for," he announced with theatrical sincerity when I opened the door. I looked at the expensive flowers, noting the price tag he had forgotten to remove. I looked at his too wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. I looked at his expensive watch and tailored clothes, all funded by my decades of hard work. "What do you want, William?" I asked quietly. His smile faltered. "Can't a son visit his mother on Mother's Day?" "A son can. But you made it clear you're not interested in being my son when you told me not to contact you again. So I'll ask once more. What do you want?" He dropped the act. "Fine. We need to discuss the trust fund situation. This has gone on long enough, don't you think? You've made your point." "This isn't about making a point. This is about respecting both your wishes and mine. You wanted space from me. I'm giving you that space completely and totally." "Along with cutting off our financial support," he said bitterly. "The support you felt entitled to while telling me to get out of your life? Yes." He thrust the flowers toward me. "At least take these. I came all this way." I shook my head. "No, thank you. You should give them to Natalie instead." "God, you're impossible," he hissed, mask falling completely. "You know what? Keep your money. Rot alone with it. See if it keeps you company in your old age." "Goodbye, William," I said, closing the door as he continued his tirade from the porch. I leaned against the closed door, trembling but resolute. When I heard his car pull away, I straightened my shoulders and walked back to the kitchen to finish my solitary Mother's Day lunch. That evening, I received a text from an unknown number. Natalie using a friend's phone. "Hope you're happy now. You've truly shown what kind of mother you really are." I blocked the number without responding. She was right, though, not in the way she meant. I had finally shown what kind of mother I was. One who valued herself enough to walk away from abuse, even when it came from her only child. After the Mother's Day confrontation, I hit my emotional bottom. For 2 days, I barely left my bed, the culmination of months of stress and heartbreak finally overwhelming me. The house felt cavernous around me, filled with memories of a family that no longer existed. Photo albums I couldn't bear to open. Holiday decorations in the attic for celebrations that wouldn't happen. The guest room I had decorated specifically for William's visits home from college, preserved like a museum exhibit. On the 3rd day, I forced myself to shower, to eat a proper meal, to step outside into the spring sunshine. The world was continuing despite my personal apocalypse. Birds building nests, neighbors walking dogs, mail carriers delivering packages. Life persisted, which meant somehow I needed to as well. I made 2 phone calls that day that would redirect the course of my life. The first was to Dr. Eleanor Jenkins, a therapist Maria had been recommending for years. The second was to my business manager, informing him I would be taking a step back from day-to-day operations for a while. For 25 years, I had worked tirelessly, partly from passion, but largely to secure William's future. With that motivation gone, I needed to rediscover why else I might want to get out of bed each morning. My first therapy session with Dr. Jenkins was brutally difficult. Articulating William's rejection and my own enabling behavior laid bare years of dysfunction I had willfully ignored. "Sandra, what you're experiencing is parental estrangement," Dr. Jenkins explained. "It's more common than people realize, but that doesn't make it any less devastating." "I keep wondering what I did wrong," I admitted. "How I failed him as a mother." "From what you've described, you didn't fail William. You gave him every advantage, every opportunity, perhaps too many without enough accountability. But his choices are his own. The question now is, who are you beyond being William's mother?" That question haunted me in the weeks that followed. Who was Sandra Franklin when not defined by motherhood or business success? What did I want from the remaining chapters of my life? Gradually, I began reconnecting with old friends I had neglected while focusing on William. Maria organized a weekend trip to a lakeside cabin with 3 other women I had known since before Paul died. The first night, sitting around a fire pit with wine and honest conversation, I laughed for the first time in months. By the second night, I found myself sharing the full story of William's text and the aftermath. "I always thought William was a bit entitled," admitted Diane, who had known him since elementary school. "But this crosses into cruel." "The thing is," I said, surprising myself with the realization as I spoke, "I'm heartbroken, but I'm also relieved in a strange way. I've been walking on eggshells for years trying to maintain a relationship with someone who saw me as nothing but a checkbook. At least now I can stop pretending." The women around the fire nodded in understanding, offering not just sympathy, but solidarity. Their friendship felt authentic in a way my relationship with William hadn't in years. No financial strings attached, no constant calculation of what I could provide versus what I might receive. Returning home from that weekend, I began methodically reclaiming my life. I joined a community garden group, getting my hands dirty alongside retirees and young families. I volunteered at a local business incubator, mentoring female entrepreneurs starting their own companies. I accepted dinner invitations I would have previously declined because I was holding space for William's rare visits. One evening, while sorting through closets as part of my ongoing house purge, I found an old sketchbook from my college days. Before marrying Paul, before the catering empire, I had harbored dreams of becoming an artist. The drawings were better than I remembered. Landscapes, still life's portraits filled with promise that motherhood and widowhood had derailed. The next day, I signed up for a painting class at the community center. My first attempts were awkward, my techniques rusty, but something long dormant awakened as I mixed colors and applied them to canvas. Soon, I was painting daily, converting Paul's old home office into a makeshift studio where light streamed through bay windows. As summer arrived, I made another significant decision. For years, I had postponed international travel, always waiting for the right time when William might join me or when he was properly settled. Now I booked a 3-week trip to Italy, Paul's ancestral homeland we had always planned to visit together. Traveling alone at 64 wasn't what I had envisioned, but it proved transformative. In Florence, I spent hours in the Uffizi sketching sculptures and paintings that had previously been just images in art books. In Tuscany, I took a week-long cooking course exchanging catering secrets with Italian chefs. In Rome, I made friends with a Canadian widow and an Australian couple who invited me to join their excursions. One evening, in a small trattoria in Siena, the proprietor asked if I was traveling alone. When I nodded, he asked, "No familia?" gesturing to the family-filled tables around us. "No familia here," I replied, "but I'm doing okay." He smiled and brought me a complimentary glass of house wine. "To courage," he said, clinking his glass against mine. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Yes, this was courage, rebuilding a life at 64, creating meaning beyond the roles of mother and business owner that had defined me for decades. Returning home, I brought with me not just souvenirs, but a renewed sense of possibility. My house no longer felt empty, but peaceful. The silence wasn't loneliness, but space for creativity and contemplation. I began hosting small dinner parties, reviving my love of feeding people without the pressure of commercial catering. In September, I launched a mentorship program for young female entrepreneurs through my company's charitable foundation. The first cohort included 6 women from disadvantaged backgrounds with promising business concepts. Working with them rekindled my passion for business development while channeling my maternal instincts toward those who actually welcomed guidance. One mentee, Jasmine, a 25-year-old developing a mobile app for meal planning, reminded me of myself at that age. Determined, creative, stretching limited resources to pursue a dream. After our sessions, she often lingered, asking questions about work-life balance and personal fulfillment beyond business success. "How do you do it?" she asked one afternoon. "Build something so successful while staying, I don't know, human," I laughed. "Trust me, I've made plenty of mistakes along the way. The biggest was probably forgetting that business success means nothing if you lose yourself in the process." As fall arrived, I faced my first holiday season without William. Rather than dreading it, I made proactive plans. For Thanksgiving, Maria and I volunteered serving meals at a homeless shelter before having dinner at her house with her extended family. For Christmas, I booked a small group tour to Germany and Austria to experience the Christmas markets. I established new traditions, finding joy in experiences rather than family obligations. I donated to charities in lieu of expensive gifts for William and Natalie. I decorated my home the way I wanted, not accommodating their designer tastes or scheduling around their limited availability. Approaching the 1-year anniversary of my birthday text debacle, I realized how dramatically my life had changed. My social circle had expanded beyond business associates to include fellow artists, garden club members, travel companions, and mentees. My days had structure and meaning, independent of William's approval or needs. I had rediscovered passions and developed new ones. One spring afternoon, I received a call from my sister Evelyn in Arizona. We had drifted apart over the years, busy with our separate lives and families. I had called her after the estrangement began, but hadn't shared many details. "Sandra, I've been thinking about you," she said. "William called me yesterday." My heart clenched. "Oh." "He wanted to know if I'd heard from you, said he was concerned about your mental state." She paused. "I told him you seemed perfectly fine when we spoke last month, better than you've sounded in years, actually." I smiled at her perception. "That's probably true." "He didn't like that answer," she continued. "Started saying things about you being vindictive, cutting him off financially for no reason. I reminded him that I've known you a lot longer than he has, and vindictive isn't in your nature." "Thank you for that," I said, genuinely touched by her defense. "Look, I don't know all the details of what happened between you two, but I know my sister. If you took such a drastic step, you had good reason." She hesitated. "And frankly, the way he talked about you, it wasn't how a son should speak about his mother." After that call, Evelyn and I began talking weekly. She planned to visit for a few days in the summer, our first extended time together in over a decade. Another relationship healing, another connection strengthened beyond the broken bond with my son. As my 65th birthday approached, I faced it with trepidation, but also anticipation. This milestone would be celebrated on my terms, with people who genuinely wished to be present. I planned a small gathering at my favorite restaurant. Maria and her husband, several close friends from my various new activities, Evelyn flying in for the weekend. The evening of my birthday, surrounded by warm conversation and genuine well-wishes, I realized I had created a chosen family to replace the biological one that had rejected me. These people valued my company, not my financial support. They remembered my birthday without prompting. They listened when I spoke and shared their own lives openly. Later that night, alone in my bedroom, I found myself looking at an old photo of William as a child, grinning with missing front teeth, arms wrapped around my neck. I allowed myself to feel the grief of losing that sweet boy to the entitled man he had become. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something I could carry without being crushed beneath it. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered, placing the photo back in the drawer. Tomorrow would bring a painting class lunch with Evelyn and an evening mentoring session with Jasmine. My life had meaning, purpose, and authentic connection. It wasn't the life I had planned, but perhaps it was the one I needed all along. 2 years after the text that shattered my world, I hardly recognized my life or myself. The crushing grief had gradually transformed into a dull ache that occasionally flared but no longer defined my days. In its place had grown something unexpected: contentment, purpose, even joy. My business continued thriving under the leadership team I had built, allowing me to focus on our charitable foundation and mentorship programs. My paintings, initially just therapy, had improved enough that a local gallery featured several pieces in a community exhibition. My renovated garden had become a neighborhood attraction during the spring garden tour. My social calendar remained consistently full with genuine friendships rather than obligation-driven events. On a crisp October morning, Edward called to inform me that he had received a letter from William. "It's addressed to you, Sandra. Do you want me to read it, or would you prefer to come to the office?" I considered for a moment. "What's the general nature of it?" "He's requesting reconciliation," Edward said carefully. "He mentions missing his mother and wanting to rebuild your relationship." My heart stuttered briefly. 2 years ago, these words would have sent me racing to welcome William back, no questions asked. Now I approached them with hard-earned caution. "Is there any mention of financial matters?" I asked. Edward's slight hesitation told me everything. "He does note that he and Natalie have been struggling financially since your estrangement, and suggests that resolving your relationship would benefit everyone involved." Of course, even in supposedly seeking reconciliation, William couldn't help revealing his true motivation. "Send me a copy, but you can respond that any communication should continue through your office for now." When the letter arrived, I read it several times, noting the carefully calculated emotional appeals mixed with subtle financial pressure. William wrote about missing his mother's guidance and regretting hasty words spoken in stress, while also mentioning their challenging financial situation and potential bankruptcy that was causing strain on his marriage. The old Sandra would have immediately called, apologized for her part in the estrangement, though there was none, and offered financial rescue. The woman I had become recognized the manipulative patterns for exactly what they were. I drafted a compassionate but firm response, which Edward's office would send. "William, I appreciate your reaching out and am open to gradually rebuilding our relationship with appropriate professional support. However, our personal relationship and your financial situation must remain separate issues. I wish you and Natalie well and hope you find stability through your own efforts, as that success will be more meaningful than anything handed to you. If you're genuinely interested in reconnecting as mother and son, I suggest we begin with family counseling rather than private meetings." He never responded to the suggestion of counseling. Instead, he attempted increasingly desperate financial maneuvers, approaching my former business associates for investment opportunities, claiming to distant relatives that I was mentally incompetent, even trying to sell stories about me to local business publications. Each attempt failed, as the reputation I had built over decades proved more durable than his short-term schemes. Throughout this difficult journey, I had learned profound lessons about love boundaries and self-worth. My maternal love for William remained unchanged. I would always care for the child I had raised, the baby I had held, the boy who had lost his father too young. But I now understood that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was enabling a disservice to both parties. My life had expanded beyond the narrow definition of William's mother. I had developed a particularly meaningful relationship with Jasmine, my young mentee. Over 2 years, I had watched her business grow from concept to successful launch. She sought my advice on matters beyond business, sharing her dreams, setbacks, and triumphs. While not my daughter biologically, she had become family in all the ways that mattered. "You changed my life, Sandra," she told me over coffee one morning. "Not just with business advice, but by showing me what a strong woman looks like when faced with heartbreak." Her words brought unexpected tears. Somehow my greatest failure had become an inspiration to someone else. The pain had produced something beautiful after all. I had also learned crucial lessons about forgiveness. Contrary to popular wisdom, I discovered that forgiveness didn't necessarily require reconciliation or continued relationship. I had forgiven William and Natalie for their cruelty, not for their benefit, but for my own peace. This forgiveness didn't mean inviting them back into my life or financial support. It simply meant releasing the burning anger that had initially consumed me, allowing me to move forward without bitterness. My relationship with money transformed as well. For decades, I had viewed my wealth primarily as William's inheritance, something to secure his future and happiness. Now I recognized money as a tool for creating meaning and positive impact. The scholarships established through my foundation helped dozens of students annually. My business mentorship program had launched 15 female entrepreneurs. My company's employee ownership plan ensured my legacy would benefit those who had helped build it. On the second anniversary of that fateful birthday text, I hosted a small dinner party for my closest friends. After dessert, Maria raised her glass for a toast. "To Sandra," she said, "who taught us all that it's never too late to rebuild a life on your own terms. 2 years ago, we worried about you surviving this heartbreak. Now we're struggling to keep up with your renaissance." Laughter rippled around the table as glasses clinked. Later, as guests departed, Evelyn, who now visited regularly, lingered to help clean up. "You know what strikes me most," she said, loading the dishwasher. "How peaceful you seem. After everything, you've found a kind of contentment I'm not sure you ever had before." Her observation resonated. The constant anxiety of trying to maintain William's approval, the walking on eggshells, the financial pressure, all had vanished. In their place was a steady sense of self-worth, no longer dependent on my role as mother or provider. "I wish it hadn't happened this way," I admitted. "I would give anything to have a healthy relationship with my son. But since that wasn't possible, I'm grateful for the life I've built instead." That night, I sat on my patio under stars that had witnessed my journey from devastation to renewal. The path forward remained imperfect. Holidays still carried an undercurrent of sadness. Certain songs or memories could still ambush me with grief. But these moments no longer derailed me. I had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Family isn't always determined by blood. True family consists of those who treat you with respect and kindness, who show up during difficult times, who value you for yourself rather than what you can provide. I had lost my biological family, but gained a chosen one that enriched my life in ways I never imagined possible. My story doesn't have the fairy tale ending of reconciliation and tearful reunions that many might hope for. William and I remain estranged, our interaction limited to occasional formal communications through attorneys. But my life continues full of purpose, creativity, friendship, and joy. Sometimes, the most painful messages can be the most valuable gifts. They show us exactly where we stand and give us the chance to stand somewhere better. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between maintaining a toxic relationship or choosing yourself? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing with others who might need to hear that life can flourish even after profound loss. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing and rediscovery. Remember, it's never too late to create a life that honors your worth.